This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
We got you on the afternoon drive. There's no question about that. And every other Tuesday in the afternoon, we lock it in and make it happen when we talk about Little Moments Count. Now, there's a young man by the name of Mr. Andre Dukes, and we're going to talk to him for a little bit and find out exactly what's going down when it takes place when we're talking Little Moments Count. But letting you know that this episode of this afternoon's drive is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focusing on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of the brain development in the first 3 years of life when it comes to the little youngsters, all right? Now, we're talking about nearly 80% of the brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days. And we're talking about that quick, short moment of when they get the opportunity to talk, to play, to read, to sing, all of those interactions when it comes to that brain and that early side. And if you like more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org. And so let me say good afternoon to Mr. Andre Dukes. How you feeling, sir?
Good afternoon, sir. It is good to hear your voice and good to be alive today.
Man, no doubt about it. This weather has gone and made changes, but we expect some of this in the Midwest. But if you look on a global perspective, oh, man, it's quite crazy. It is definitely quite crazy.
Yes, sir. Well, I spent the last week in Senegal, Africa, so coming back to this weather was a bit of a transition, but definitely had some beautiful weather in Senegal.
Yeah, well, since you just mentioned the word Senegal, just give us just a little bit of insight when it comes to going and participating in, what was happening over that way and with your team itself when it comes to the communities that you visited over that way. What was going down? What's happening?
Yes, sir. Well, we were in Senegal as part of Project Safety Nets, which was actually started by Ann Dillard, who is a former Northsider who is now in Atlanta. But the focus of Project Safety Nets was initially to address malaria there in Senegal and bring mosquito bed nets so that, folks would not, contract malaria and could sleep at night. But it is now expanded to include 3 areas, one business, another education, and medical support. So the goal is really to assist 6 communities in sustainability projects, meaning, giving them like micro grants and things that will help them start businesses, build hen homes so that they can generate income, and really have ways to sustain themselves. So we serve people living with leprosy, women who are learning to start businesses. We support a medical center, a Fulani village, and also 2 schools who all, with limited resources, are achieving great success and expansion just across the board.
Okay. Now talk to us a little bit about when it comes to the education system over there and when it comes to the growth of the youngsters, when we're talking about children and growing and doing and academically.
Yeah, so what I'm learning is that Senegal was colonized by the French but gained their independence in 1960. So the education system is built on a French model where children start elementary school at 7 years old and are taught on a 10-year education plan, so much different than how we function. And then it focuses on reading, writing, French language, and most schools include Islamic studies as it's a mostly Muslim country. But students then move to upper secondary education, which we would refer to as high school, but they don't, graduate out of high school. They graduate out of elementary into high school or their, upper secondary education. And then beyond that, they go on to upper, education, but usually they have to either leave the country to achieve that post-secondary education. But, there's a lot of challenges to receiving an education from under-resourced schools to transportation and access. But children, I've learned, are eager to learn, and that's really what stood out to me. They have about a 77% graduation rate from elementary to upper secondary education. And the school that we support has become the number one school in their region and have doubled their enrollment in the last year from about 300 students to almost 600 students now. And, you know, that they also want to expand their school and add a preschool component. So they're really seeing preschool as an essential part of the education experience for children and trying to build that out there.
Yeah, because you just broke down my next question when we're talking about succeeding in school, and then also besides that, being prepared for what's coming around the corner when it comes to the educational side for the youngsters. But even extending in just that question itself, but when it comes to reading to your child, why is it more important to do that to make it later on in life more successful?
Absolutely. So reading is fundamental. I mean, children cannot be successful academically if they are unable to read and comprehend the material. We also know that reading helps to build cognition. So a child's ability to process information is promoted through reading. When children have a strong vocabulary and cognition, they perform better in other subjects. So reading sets children up for improved outcomes in school and ultimately outcomes in life. And so the more that we can read to our children, we're helping them to build vocabulary. We're also helping them to become more creative, to build those cognitive processes so that they can be successful in all of the subjects that they will go through in school.
Now, when we talk about, the learning process and that whole aspect of it, now we're talking about parents and we're talking about caregivers are part of that straight streamline of making sure that things happen. What are some of the particular tips that you may have that you would express to the listening audience of how to do some things in order to make some things better?
Yeah, so I encourage parents to not only focus on books, but read labels while cooking. Signs while driving. I mean, we drive down the street and there's many signs and billboards that we can point our children to and read them. But also playing games and reading the instructions, I think, are ways that we can help our children increase their vocabulary and just learn sentence structure and sight words and all those kinds of things. But there's many opportunities to read in our environment. And when reading books, we ask parents to use the CARE strategy, which is really an acronym for using descriptive commenting, asking open-ended questions, responding to your child with comments and expanding on those comments. So, for instance, you might say, Johnny runs fast. Well, yes, Johnny is a fast runner, and he probably has strong legs, too. What do you think is a way that we might respond to our children and then expand on what they say as a way to enhance that reading experience and, get them involved in the story. So getting them involved in the story helps with comprehension. They can better understand it when they can relate the story and what they are reading as well. So there's ways to, increase the fun, but also enhance the curiosity that children have when reading books and hearing stories.
Now, when it comes to you directly and yourself, and think about this for a short second, it's like, have you ever been to Senegal before, number one? But then even beyond that, what did you learn about self while taking this particular trip?
That's a good question. So this is my second year going on this particular trip to Senegal. And, one of the things that I've really been concerned about in America is the loss of humanity. And, going over there this time and really sitting in a space with people that look like me, that are all working together, that have limited resources but respect and honor each other and do what they have to do to make it in life. It really restored, for me personally, a sense of humanity. When you look at 50% of the population being impoverished, but yet, homelessness is not a huge issue there because everyone, takes care of themselves. Family lives together. They will build compounds for the entire family. We had an opportunity to sit down with the elders there and learn about manhood. And, one of the things that they really emphasize is, this respect for parents and elders that is really taught from an early childhood perspective that, this is the way we, associate with each other and we respect each other in our culture. They learn, they speak Wolof, which is their original language, but they also learn French and some, know Arabic. And so they're learning multiple languages. And you just to see how they are being able to build their community and grow as a society, all working together, is just inspiring and just restores your sense of humanity.
So when we're looking at the process of learning, not just is for the youngsters, but it's for the older people as well. And I'm speaking of yourself, myself, and just life within itself, because every time you make a move, it's a new change and it's a new experience. And it sounds to me like you had a great time over there, but it was a lot of work, but at the same time, you love the space that you're in.
Absolutely. It was life-changing, and I encourage everyone, if you have an opportunity to go anywhere in Africa, you need to go and to reconnect with our roots.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, that's Mr. Andre Dukes, and talking about it and letting you know and again, preparing our youngsters when it comes to the children and succeeding in school and just life within itself. And that 306, what is it, the first 1,000 days, or how does that work? Talk to me.
Yep. So the first 1,000 days, represent our greatest opportunity to set children up for life success. Every interaction counts. There's 700 neuron connections in the brain per second. And so every interaction counts, and we can literally wire our children for success.
Well, because I was going to throw this question back at you, because, when we're talking about the opportunity of helping youngsters and youth grow, and at a very young age, and then, we're looking at the sources and resources when it comes to what's available and what's around. Can you give us some examples of what parents can do when it comes to limited resources to help their children grow? And on top of that, when it elevates to singing and reading and playing and just everyday objects.
Yeah, so we think we, sometimes have to go and buy a lot of toys for our children or books and those kinds of things. But you can be cooking in the kitchen and find many opportunities to read labels, to read recipe cards, to really narrate the process of cooking with children and having your children alongside you, naming the different vegetables, the fruits that you are cooking. And so this is a great way to help build language, but also identify the different fruits and food groups and all of those things, but also teach children how to measure and, just learning process and how to cook. So that's just one way. I mean, I also think about bath time for smaller babies, and that's an opportunity to play with bubbles and, have toys in the water and just playing and having fun in the water. Babies love water. And incidentally, it's a great time to help babies start to learn how to swim, which is very important as well. And not necessarily in the bathtub, but you may take the baby out to the park and wade in the wading pool, but just getting them used to doing fun things and learning critical skills for life. So, also like art and crafts. And with smaller babies, I mean, just doing finger painting, sensory kinds of things like playing with Play-Doh and slime are fun things to do, don't cost a lot of money, but children love to do it.
Now, even beyond that, because one of the things you mentioned was the word language, and even beyond that, and dealing with that mindset and being able to communicate with each other, how important is it to take that time? And I'm talking about in the inner being of taking that time to communicate with your child and just tell them a little bit of history about themselves, their family, their family as in the mother or the father's family, and history of the family to make that unit grow.
Absolutely. I mean, storytelling and narrating are, some of the easiest ways that we can help build that language that children will need to be successful once they enter into school. And so just talking about family history, telling story rhymes, those kinds of things are wonderful ways to really help children develop those language skills. But also, I think what's important for us to know is that it is the face-to-face interactions that we have with children. So children learn best when they have three-dimensional interactions. And a lot of times, parents are busy and, they can't sit down with the child, and so they will put them in front of the television, and that's okay for a period of time, or they may have an iPad. That's okay for a period of time. But what is most important in terms of developing that healthy brain stimulation is that face-to-face interaction, the back and forth returns, talking, responding, expanding. All of those things are what parents need to know that helps brain development at all levels.
Man, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Mr. Andre Dukes, and he is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to knowledge, when it comes about the youth and helping out here in the Twin Cities, because I watched you at work, brother, and I like to say hats off to you for that you do and all that you do when it comes to the youth and helping them to balance out on balance of walking around and putting their feet on one ground, one foot behind the other. So I like to say hats off to you on that. And if by chance I missed a question or two, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we did a good job in covering the basics. What I would just continue to emphasize is playing with children, and whether that's talking, reading, or singing, it is really about how we have fun with our children. Fun parents produce happy children, and that's what we want for our community.
No doubt, ladies and gentlemen. Always remember, communication is key. That's my man, Mr. Andre Dukes. I want to say thank you very much for taking the time and the opportunity to enlighten the listening audience. All right?
Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, also to let you know that you can hear a recording of the show at littlemomentscount.org/podcast. That's if you like a recording of it. Also, if you like, you can learn more about Little Moments Count by visiting their website at littlemomentscount.org. It's FM 89.9 KMOJ, no doubt about it. It's truly the people's station. Keep it right where it's at, where the listening is good.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.